Okay, so hi everyone. I thought I'd do this interview video. I'm going to do two of them. So this one is if you have gotten an interview, and then I'm going to do another one that is if you haven't gotten an interview this time round. I've been on both sides, so hopefully I'll be able to give like a little bit of insight into both. But yeah, as I said, this one is for if you have got an interview. So first of all, well done. It's so much work to get to this point, so you should be really proud of yourself. You've done really well to get to this stage, and it's like the last little hurdle to get over before starting. So yeah, well done. I hope you've all got allocations to places that you really wanted to go. I know this isn't necessarily, I really wanted to go to Sheffield just because I'd done uni there, but it turns out that I have landed on my feet in Birmingham and I love it, so don't necessarily worry too much about the allocation. But yeah, well done. It's it's a lot of work, so you should be really happy. So this year is the same as last year's interviews, and that was the first year that they had done it in this way. And I think it's really good that they've kept this interview style, I guess, because beforehand it was stations in Birmingham and you had like 10 minutes at each station. There were 4 stations and you moved along. But I don't think it was very fair, because even though Birmingham's Midlands, it's still a long way for some people to get to, especially if you don't live anywhere near train stations like I do at home. And it's just not fair if you have maybe disabilities that would make it harder for you to get to Birmingham in the first place. So I think these interviews help you, they help me anyway feel a lot more confident about the whole thing. I didn't like the idea of doing the stations as well. And being able to kind of do a bit of research in the department is really, really useful, but I will get onto that in a little while. So I thought I'd do kind of split this video into 3 parts. So stuff to do before the interview, stuff to do during the interview, and then a tiny bit on what to do afterwards, but there's not much you can do after then. I am going to do another video on what kind of the aftermath of getting a place. So hopefully that will answer some of the questions from that point onwards. But yeah, once you've done the interview, the ball's in their court really, so try to not worry about it too much. So yeah, before the interview, I think there's quite a lot that you can do, which is quite nice if you're like me and you like to go into something feeling confident and comfortable and like you've revised quite a lot. So I've only ever interviewed for genomics, but I'm going to try and make the information relevant to all specialisms. But I've done quite a lot of videos now with individual trainees, so they might be able to help you with some of the thoughts about what kind of tests you'd be doing and things like that. So try to go back and find your specialism and watch that as well, I guess. As if I'm like promoting myself, but yeah, there you go. So try to think about what tests your department does. I think this is really important. You can go in with all the information of the theory as you want, but you need to be able to relate this to what you'll be doing day to day. So I revised in genetics, an autosomal dominant disease, an autosomal recessive disease, an X-linked dominant disease, and an X-linked recessive disease, and a tiny bit on mitochondrial disease as well. But I don't think I really got asked anything in specific about those. But as a part of that revision, I revised what tests you would do to help diagnose these, and that was the really useful bit as a part of my interview, trying to think about what tests you do, what results they could show, what they could be used for, and then like limitations. So I guess an example would be like a translocation. If someone's infertile, and they have a chromosome translocation. You could use karyotyping to look for that, and it's really good, but it's quite slow compared to other techniques, and you can't detect things that are quite small happening within the chromosomes. Sorry, that's my mum. Try to use examples that really interest you and excite you, because they'll be easier to learn and easier to kind of revise, because you'll genuinely be interested in them, and it will also come across in your interview because, again, you'll genuinely be excited about it, and that's always good to show that you have some interest. And then thinking about how the right results are given to the right patient in the right time frame is important as well. So a little bit on how you would maintain quality. Thinking, because we can't just get a result and be like, okay, brilliant, there you go, there's your answer. You need to make sure that it is the correct result, and think about the different ways that you could do that within your specialism as well. So if you work in, I'm going to use respiratory because the person that's popped into mind is ADHD Alice on Instagram and her little reels. So they have to like calibrate the machines and make sure that they're working properly, things like that. And yeah, I think try to think about your specialism within like the patient experience. So if you're patient facing, you need to show that you are able to kind of give information in ways that people can understand, communicate well, show empathy, be resilient, things like this. So you can use anything though to show this. It doesn't have to, none of my examples in my interview were from a patient perspective because I'd never worked in healthcare or anything like that before. Communication is still really important in non-patient facing specialisms like genetics, and I used my part-time job working for a tutoring company called Explore Learning. So we worked with children from 4 to 16, but there were like some 3-year-olds that were really ahead and some older children who were a little bit more behind. And I had to make sure that I was talking to them in an age-appropriate way. You wouldn't talk to like a 16-year-old the way you would talk to a 4-year-old. And communicating that information in a way that they would understand it. People had different learning abilities, learning styles, and then some of them, English may not have been their first language, or they may have been non-verbal, and you had to try to think of different ways that would help you to give that information. I read an application that had a really good example of where they'd shown respect for people. So she'd worked in M&S as a bra fitter, and you're seeing like lots of different people. Some of them will feel a lot more comfortable in that situation than others, and you have to show that you're treating people with respect and with dignity and things like that. Working together for patients. I'd never worked together for a patient, but I had worked together for like the children, and you work in group projects at uni. So yeah, just trying to think of those different aspects from your experience that you can link into a lot. As a side note, people used to say this every year when I go to the open days, and I can't imagine that anyone actually wouldn't, but apparently people do, and it's they don't read the NHS constitution before the interview. I don't know why you wouldn't, because it's not really long. There are like main principles and values and things, and they're the most important parts. And you don't just want to be like, oh, well, I am respectful, because anyone can say that. You need to kind of think critically about what you can show as an example to show that you're respectful. It's much more useful to say that rather than just being like, oh, I am the most respectful person in the world. So yeah, do read the NHS Constitution. It's on the Department of Health website or the Gov website or something, but you can literally just type it into Google and find it. Yeah, I don't really know why you wouldn't read that, but apparently people do. And yeah, as I said, find specific examples for that as well. One really good thing about having the interviews with one department is that you can tailor your research into it towards who you'll be interviewing for. So I obviously knew that I was interviewing for Birmingham, so I could do a little bit of research into the lab and what tests they do, which regions they kind of work with and work for, what the community of Birmingham is like and what kind of tests we might be doing because of that, and what kind of cultural things you need to be aware of, and then also what the lab specialises in. So I don't know if this is the same for other specialisms in other places. I'm guessing it is, but we have things that like we're particularly interested in. So I found out that Birmingham's kind of interested in imprinting disorders. So I didn't revise loads on imprinting disorders. I did read over things and just look into things. But then at the end, when it came to my questions for them, I was able to kind of bring it in then and show that I'd done research and ask them questions about it and see whether they just have like a specialist service that they do for imprinting disorders, or whether they do like extra research and which ones they kind of focus on. And yeah, it shows that you're interested in it, it shows that you want to learn from them, and I think it just makes you come across in a good way. So yeah, I guess that's my main pieces of advice beforehand. Try to just come across in the best light, and try to learn things inside and out, I guess, so that you aren't just reeling off what you've memorised. Try to understand the processes behind it so you can explain it in more of a conversational way, I suppose. So this is kind of still before, but it's immediately before, just trying to think about where you are in your setting. So I was lucky that I was at home because of the pandemic. I'd gone home from uni, and I definitely feel more comfortable at home, and it's got a better Wi-Fi and there were less people in the house. But I know not everyone can do that, so if you are at uni, try to make sure that you've asked the people that you're living with to be quiet, to maybe not have their music on, to not put the washing machine on, to not come storming into your bedroom like, oh, have you heard about this? Just let people know, and hopefully they can be mindful of that as well. Think about your background. I know this is really hard at uni, but they are understanding that you will most likely have like your bed, your wardrobe in the background and stuff, but make sure that you've made it look neat beforehand. I did mine in my kitchen, and I had like a similar setup to this but at home, so there was like a mirror and I don't know what that's called, a cabinet, and so I cleared everything off of the cabinet and moved the mirror somewhere else just so that there was less distractions in the background and they could kind of focus on me. And I don't know about other people, but when I'm on Zoom calls sometimes I'll watch how I'm acting, so I didn't want to kind of look and be like, oh, I've not moved that, I should have moved that and stuff. Just try to make you concentrate better as well. But I moved them all onto my kitchen table, and then when we started the interview I had to turn my laptop around to show that there was no one else in the room and that I didn't have like notes stuck all over the room or anything. And so I had to kind of be like, oh, sorry that everything's so messy. So try to keep that in mind as well and make things neat, or as neat as you can. I was quite lucky that my dad and my brother were both at work, so it was just my mum in the house, and it was in May last year when it was, May last year when it was really hot, so she just took herself out for a walk, because I don't like the thought of people listening in to my answers, because you're not fully yourself when you're in an interview, I don't think, and I didn't want her to hear what I was saying, basically. There was something that just popped into my head. Oh yeah, pets. So I have a cat at home who is the most pestering boy when he's hungry. And I knew that he could very easily interrupt the interview by demanding food loudly, persistently, biting me. Like, I could just see it happening. So beforehand I made sure that I'd fed him, and then I took him upstairs onto my bed and got him to go to sleep, and then closed the door so he couldn't get into the kitchen. And equally, if you have like a dog that barks at the postman when he comes, maybe try to see if someone can take the dog out for a walk or something while you're in, just to, again, reduce distractions for you and the interviewers. So you want them to be focusing on you rather than on something else happening. Yeah, I think that's mainly everything that I have for the setting. Oh, clothes. So I know some people wore like a nice top and then slouchy clothes like leggings or joggers or things, because that's what made them feel most comfortable. Personally, I wore what I would have worn to Birmingham, including the shoes, which was probably a bit of overkill, because I felt like I would feel more like I was in an interview if I was dressed fully in interview clothes. So I wore what I wore to Birmingham. That was what was going to make me feel most suitable for the environment. But if you feel more comfortable in comfortable clothes, then do that. Make sure that you're feeling the best that you can for the interview. So yeah, I think that is everything for setting. And beforehand, I'll just have a little think. I should have written this all down as I thought about it. So during the interview, I guess I'll give a bit of info on how it was set up, and then what I did do and what I wish I had done during it. So I think ours was on Teams. I don't know if they'll still be on Teams, but ours was done on Teams, and I logged on about 10 minutes early. I made sure that my computer was up and running because it is the oldest thing in the world, so I had it on like all morning getting ready for it, and joined 10 minutes early. It started a tiny bit late, I think, because it was at 12ish, and my interviewers had been interviewing all day, I think, so they just needed a few minutes to like grab a drink, grab a snack. And you are in a waiting room, and then you are let into the waiting room with the interviewers, and someone from the school pops in to check that everyone's been able to connect, everyone's been able to get in, that cameras and microphones are working. And yeah, in my case, she then left, but I know that for some other people, they do stay in the interview to make sure that the interviews are being conducted like properly. But I think that's just a cluster of cases, not everyone, and I didn't have someone from the school. So I just had the director of our lab and then one of the senior scientists, and I kind of knew what they looked like because I'd been a bit of a stalker and just gone onto the website and looked at kind of the senior people within the lab, because for me that was going to make me feel more comfortable if I could at least kind of recognise them. And yeah, then it just got started. We gave a bit of like an intro. They gave an intro on who they were, I gave a bit of an intro on who I was, and then we started the questions, which I think there were like 4 main questions, 4 or 5 main questions that were then split into smaller chunks, and they would ask the big question at the start, and you could like provide your answer, and then if there was anything that you missed, they would kind of go back and ask more questions on those, which was quite nice because it felt more like a bit of a conversation rather than just like multiple choice answers almost, and like multiple choice questions where you start off on one thing, move on to something completely different, move on to something completely different. And I guess it was important to kind of think of the whole process within those questions, and how you would make sure that the result was correct and things like that. So it wasn't just about what you'd do in a specific situation. You kind of had to think about all aspects. And they brought in NHS constitution bits to every single one, but I think there was one that was a little bit more based towards that. I was quite surprised at how much of the interview was towards kind of values. I thought it would have been a bit more scientific, but they know that you are like knowledgeable in that. Well, they may not know, but you've gotten that far. So they want to see that you're taking in mind the patient and all the wider aspects of healthcare as well. One thing I wish I did do was pause more. So you get marked on how you communicate, and I wish I had taken a pause at the start of the question to think about how I was going to structure my answer and think about what I was going to say, because I think just taking a pause at the start is a bit better than getting halfway through a sentence and then taking a pause because you're not quite sure where you're going to go next. And within communication, you have to think about your non-verbal communication as well. So eye contact, showing that you're actively listening, smiling and things. Just try to be wary of how you're looking. Try to get a good night's sleep beforehand, or drink like a strong cup of tea so that you're not yawning. Just little things like that. And try to notice when you use filler words. I've noticed from these videos that I use quite a lot of filler words, and I have been trying to reduce those. But it's definitely something that I wish I'd done better in the interview. That's something that I came out of the interview, and that was the thing that I was most worried about, not necessarily how I answered the questions or like what I answered the questions with, but more how I answered them. And yeah, ask questions to them as well. Like, they're not expecting you to know everything and like anything and everything about your specialism. It is a training program, so you do have to have knowledge, but they want to see that you want to learn as well and that you're receptive to learning. So there was definitely one question or one part of one question that I didn't know the answer to, so I was just honest that I didn't know the answer to it and asked them how they would approach it within the lab, and I think that shows that you want to learn. And also think about why you want to do the SCP. Like, it is a long program, it's a lot of work, as you can see from my dark circles. And it is, yeah, it's 3 years, it's a lot of your time, and it is great, I do really enjoy it, but if it's like, think about what if it is exactly what you want to do, because some people that do drop out, like, that is a shame because they've wasted their time as well. So think about why you want to do it, because that comes off really well in the interview, and I think it genuinely was one of the questions that I was asked. And a big draw for me is that I really enjoy learning. I have been in education now since the age of 4 and I have never left uni. But yeah, I love learning, I want to learn. I love healthcare and medicine, and I wanted to help people, but I knew that academic research wasn't the setting that I would enjoy doing that in. And so the SCP was like a perfect mixture of that for me, because you're helping patients quickly, if that makes sense. Like everything that you do on a day-to-day basis is impacting patients' care, but and you're also doing the research side of things, but you're doing research in like a clinical context. So that was like the perfect mixture for me. So yeah, think about why you want to do it yourself, because it's also 3 years of your training department's effort and resources as well, and they do put a lot of time into training you. So it's best that you both get the best experience, basically. So yeah, I guess that is what I would do during the interview. If I've missed anything out like massively, please do feel like you can ask questions either in the comments or like message me on Instagram. And then afterwards, there is not a lot that you can do. So my main piece of advice, as hard as it is to kind of put it to the back of your mind. The ball's in their court now. You have done the best that you can, and you've worked as hard as you can. So just try to. I took the rest of that day off and went for a big walk, because it was lockdown and that's all you could do, and just had like some drinks in the garden and stuff, and just tried to put it to the back of my head. I found out the day after or 2 days after or something, so they got back to you really quickly, and then you had like 24 or 48 hours to respond whether you wanted the place. So you do hear back relatively quickly, unless something changes this year, you never know. So just try to cross the hurdle of whether you get a place or not when you get to it. But yeah, good luck everyone. And hopefully, I'm going to do another video on like what to do once you've got a place. I think me and Nicole were going to do one about like moving to a new city as well. So yeah, just good luck, and just try to show them why you are the best person for the job. Okay, so yeah, happy May everyone, happy bank holiday. And hopefully I will be posting a little bit more now that my exams are almost out of the way. Cool, okay, bye.